Bobby Deskins pointing that out. We'll get to those bits of advice in just a moment. Meantime, Governor Ron DeSantis just stepping to the podium. Let's go ahead and listen into his update.
One of the processing sites here in Lake City for Florida Power and Light. We've had linemen come from all over the continental United States. California, people are coming. Others have come. So we will have over 50,000 linemen that are pre-staged in the state of Florida. As soon as the storm passes, they are going to go to work. And look, if you are in the path of this storm, you are most likely going to lose power. So just prepare for that. Know that that's something that's likely to happen. If you are going to use a generator, make sure you're using it properly. Do not run your generator inside your home. The generator must be operated outside your home. Keep it away from any door or window. But all these folks are going to be brought to bear to be able to get the power back on as soon as humanly possible. We just did Hurricane Helene. That was 2.4 million restorations, as fast as it's ever been done in the history, I think, probably of all hurricanes in the U.S. This one, coming on the heels of Helene, where you still have hundreds of thousands of people out of power in other parts of the country, like North Carolina and Georgia, you have a lot of linemen who are working in those areas. So the fact that we got over 50,000, that in and of itself is a big deal, but especially considering that you have a lot of people that are still at work in the aftermath of Helene in these other states. It's really, really remarkable. So you will likely lose power if you're in the path of this storm. Just be prepared for that. Have a plan to deal with it. But just know that we've got huge numbers of assets that are here, ready to go, and they are going to go as soon as it's safe to do so. The other thing that is worth pointing out, it's a lot of focus, understandably, on the west coast of Florida. That's what's going to see the really significant storm surge, particularly where the storm makes landfall and just south of the eye wall is going to likely lead to the most significant storm surge. The way these storms go, they go counterclockwise. If you're on the north side of the storm on the west coast, it may be that that pushes water away from the coast. That's possible depending on how the storm goes in. Right now, the track is that it's going to enter the west coast of Florida and then go almost horizontal across the state, maybe a little east-northeast, and then come out maybe in like southern Brevard County. Look, this can all change in the next 6, 8, 10 hours. But what will happen on the east coast of Florida is you will have the possibility for storm surge there. It may not be 10, 15 feet like we could get on the west coast, but it's going to kind of be the opposite. If you're on the southern part of the storm, a lot of the storm is going to push the water away from the east coast. But if you're on the northern side of the storm, the counterclockwise, it's going to bring surge in. So places like Brevard, Volusia, Flagler, St. John's, you're likely to see surge. You're likely to see, and we've had issues on the coast there anyways with erosion and whatnot. So just understand that is going to be something that could happen. It's not just about where it makes landfall. It's going to barrel across the state of Florida. It's going to exit on the east coast of Florida, and that also can produce some storm surge. So just make sure if you're on the east coast of Florida that you understand this is not just a west coast event. The major effects for surge will be on the west, but there is going to be impacts far inland and on the other coast in the state of Florida. The fuel situation, I know when the initial evacuations went out on Monday and then even on Sunday when people were anticipating massive run on gas, people were crowding the stations. You had long lines. A lot of the gas stations ran out of fuel. We have not run out of fuel overall. When those stations go through it much quicker than normal, they don't have the same delivery schedules that could keep up, so they got to flex. So what we've done is, one, we've got 1.6 million gallons of diesel on hand just for the state of Florida and 1.1 million gallons of gasoline for the state of Florida. So that's just us. They're still bringing fuel out of the ports. The ships are not coming in, but the dockside operations have been going. Now, I'd imagine Manatee, Tampa, probably not at this point, just given what's happening. East Coast, that's likely dockside going to slow down too as the storm approaches. But we have, to try to overcome, had Florida Highway Patrol facilitate 106 long-distance fuel tanker escorts. So they got the sirens, they're bringing those gas into the gas stations, and they've done almost 1 million gallons of gas with that. So I appreciate what they're able to do for that. We may have interruption in fuel delivery into Port Manatee, into Port of Tampa, depending on the damage from Milton, and we will work on contingencies to make sure we're able to have a supply of fuel. But people should just understand, we've got a lot of fuel on hand from the state. There is a lot of fuel still left at the ports that will be re-engaged from dockside once the storm passes on the West Coast. But we could potentially have some of these ports that may not be able to open right away. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. We've been talking about the debris. That mission was an emergency mission to help local communities who suffered a lot of debris and were not getting the debris moved quick enough. Places like the Barrier Islands in Pinellas County, Barrier Islands in Manatee, and even parts of Sarasota Barrier Islands. They worked through the night for the last few days, all the way through last night into this morning, and they've been able to remove a remarkable amount of debris statewide. They've just our folks. This is not even our responsibility in the state. This is a responsibility of the locals to pick up the stuff. But we've done a total 270,000 cubic yards of debris throughout the state of Florida with just our Department of Transportation and other assets. And just on those barrier islands and that emergency mission, almost 55,000 cubic yards of debris. So probably in those areas where our trucks were doing all night, the last few nights, 24/7 with the landfills, probably we're able to take about half of the debris that was there and that would not have been picked up unless we did it. That's going to mitigate some of the damage that happens when the hurricane comes in. We've got a remarkable amount of assets that are assembled. I've been in contact with both the President of the United States as well as the FEMA director. We're also closely coordinating with all our local partners in the affected counties, and we have a National Guard contingent that has never been amassed before for one of these. 6,000 Florida Guard soldiers and an additional 3,000 from other states, 34 search and rescue aircraft, and 500 tactical vehicles. This is the largest storm mobilization in the history of the state of Florida. Of course, we have our Florida State Guard, which is out and doing great work, and they've got massive numbers of assets that are going to be assisting them in their missions, and some of those guys have done a really, really good job, and we really appreciate it. Now, Florida Disaster Fund. We have activated this for Helene. It's also activated for Milton because we know there's going to be damage. So if you want to do Florida Disaster Fund, you can go to floridadisasterfund.org. This is a tax-deductible charitable contribution. We've raised many millions of dollars. I want to thank Publix, Walmart, Wells Fargo, and Lennar for coming in big. You can also text disaster 20222, 20222 to be able to do that. Once we get an assessment of the needs and the damages, we'll be able to use that in a very flexible way to help get people back on their feet. We did it after Hurricane Ian to great effect, and we'll do it after this storm as well. If you have an EV and you're in an area where you are susceptible to storm surge, just know if your EV gets inundated with salt water, it increases the risk of fires. Those fires are very difficult with the battery to put out, and we have had people that homes have burned down as a result of those EVs being in the garage when you had storm surge. So if you can, you want to move that to higher ground and try to prevent saltwater intrusion. So we've had evacuations now in effect in these counties on the west coast of Florida. I know there's now some evacuations on some of the east coast counties that I had alluded to with the storm surge threat in the barrier islands on the east coast of Florida. The conditions are starting to get bad. Listen to your local emergency managers about when it's too dangerous to go out. In many parts of Florida, you probably could still go to a shelter, but you're starting to see major weather events happen. I know there were some tornadoes, massive tornadoes. I mean, just these like unbelievable tornadoes that you're seeing. So the hazards are increasing. Depending where you are, it may not be safe, certainly to get on the interstate at this point, but listen to your local officials. But if it is still safe and you can get out of the evacuation zones, you just go to local shelter in your county. You don't even need to get on the interstate or doing that. And we still have a lot of space in our shelters around the state. We have now Sunshine Skyway Bridge and Howard Franklin are closed in the Tampa Bay area. Courtney Campbell Causeway and Gandy are closed going into Pinellas County. Those will likely be closed completely very soon, and it's just a result of the conditions that are deteriorating. So please understand the closures of those bridges. Until 5 p.m. or it's no longer safe, if you need to get to a shelter, we've partnered with Uber to provide free rides to shelters in counties with evacuation orders. If you want to do it, the promo code is Milton Relief 1, the number 1, Milton Relief 1. And that's going to go till either 5 o'clock today or when it's no longer safe, and that will likely vary depending on where you are throughout the state of Florida. So we have almost 150 shelters that are open for general population. We've got over 30,000 individuals that are in it, but we have space for over 200,000 individuals. So there is space available. The counties, by and large, I think are going to have Starlink. I think they're going to have the generator power, so if you lose power. So it isn't like, I mean, you're going to be able to use devices and stuff like that. Now, we also have 36 county-owned special needs shelters. Our Florida Department of Health works with that. They're opening in areas that are in the path of store. They're open. And then we have done 6 state-operated supplemental shelters. So these are, we call them shelters of last resort. You know, maybe you're on the interstate and you think it's getting a little too dangerous. You can pull off, and we've got places that are not far away. Hard Rock Event Center in Tampa, City Furniture in Plant City, Bay Care in Tampa, Life Science Logistics in Lakeland, Babcock Ranch in Punta Gorda, and then the Wiregrass Ranch Sports Camp in Wesley Chapel. If you want to go to see your shelter options, go to floridadisaster.org/shelters. And then for any EM updates for your specific county, you can go to floridadisaster.org/counties. I want to thank everybody that's been working hard. We've had really round the clock for over 2 weeks now.
All right, a lot of vital information right there from Governor Ron DeSantis. Another update coming this afternoon. So we will keep you posted on that, give you the bullet points. But right now we have another warning.